And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with the Game Boy Geek.
Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek. You may have seen my review for the Manhattan Project, one of my favorite worker placement games. I absolutely adore that game. Well, today we're going to take a look at two expansions. One of them called the Second Stage, which is the first real pretty much major expansion for this game, and another mini one called Nations, which is a small little expansion that you can buy separately. We're going to go over both of those today, where it adds what I think is a lot of interesting new ways to play the game. And I already loved it in the base game, but let's check out what's in this and if it's an expansion that you have to have, and will I ever play without it? Let's check it out. We're going to start first with some of the fringe items that come with the expansion. First, they come with these player aids, one for each person, and it's cool because it tells you how to set up things really quickly, some important things to remember. And then on the back side, it has how many points you need to win for certain game numbers, player numbers, and then the general things of placing workers and retrieving workers and all the sort of rules around those major mechanics. So I love player aids, so this is a good thing to have. I wish it came with the base game, but hey, I'm happy that it's here with the expansion. This little separate board that you get now goes sort of above the normal main board, and it's just kind of cool. It's not necessary, it's not absolutely needed, but it is kind of cool that it gives you a spot to, let's say, put your yellow cake, your building damage icons, your bombs loaded, and the money, and it just kind of separates it out, makes it look kind of cool, makes it look like a bigger production. There's also another separate board here for available bombs, so when you're pulling the bombs out that are available for people to design and build, it just goes on this little board where it just has a spot to put these cards and where to put these cards. Again, not absolutely necessary, but when you have all these boards together above the main board, it does look a lot nicer. Now the Nations cards, the Nations Part 1 was not part of the Second Stage expansion. It's actually its own sort of mini expansion. It's just a very small thing. It's available at the BGG store and some other places you might be able to find it. I think it's only about $5. And the nations, so what this does is everybody gets either a random nation at the beginning of the game, or you can deal them out the way you want. You can draft for them, you can pay for them, any way you want to do it. It says in the rules you can do it. We've always taken them randomly. I'm just going to show you a few of them from Nations 1, my favorite ones. Soviet Union. So the way these work are, these go in your own buildings, so nobody else can use them. They can't be espionaged, and they can't be damaged by airstrikes. So only you can use them, and you can use them as long as they're open for you. So Soviet Union, you can use the espionage on a single opponent building at any time this turn. So that's probably the most powerful one from the Nations 1. China, retrieve all your placed permanent labors from your buildings. So you can get some people back without having to reclaim all of them. That's pretty cool. And then Britain, you could take 2 attackers or remove 1 damage from one of your buildings. So it adds sort of a little flavor, a little bit of character for your team, and this is Nations 1. Here is Nations of the World 2. This is inside the Second Stage expansion. Again, it comes with 7 other new cards. The first Nations was 7 cards, the second nation is 7 cards, 7 countries. So here's 3 of my favorites from this one. Pakistan, discard one of your bomb designs to the bottom of the bomb design deck, then collect $10 or 5 aircraft or 6 yellow cake from the general supply. Very interesting and very cool. North Korea, again, it takes a scientist and a yellow cake to do it, but after you activate this card, the other players may choose to give you $3. If they do not, you may collect 1 uranium or 1 plutonium. Oh, how's that? Is that thematic enough for you? And Israel, you just put 1 anybody. Build a bomb ignoring the scientist requirements or engineer requirements. This ability cannot be used when building an H-bomb. So, we'll get to H-bombs later. That is 3 of my favorites of the Nations 2 and how they work. There's a new bomb type in this expansion called the H-bomb. How you get one of these H-bomb cards is in the normal way that you would typically get one of these bomb design cards. When someone goes to that space and these bomb design cards are being passed around, when you take one of these as normal, you take it and then you discard it. You put it at the bottom of the pile, of the draw pile for the bomb cards, and then you're able to take one of these H-bomb cards. And let's take a look at it. Ooh, what is all this? Well, there's a new resource in the game. It's lithium deuteride, or LD for short. And so these are just like the yellow cake, except it's just a new resource. And what this bomb requires to be made is, wow, look at that, 5 scientists and 4 engineers and 7 LDs, 7 of these here. But when you're able to do that, it's x2. All the bombs of the H-bombs now are just ×2. And they can only be built upon plutonium bombs, and you can pick which one it is. Each plutonium bomb can only be upgraded once with the H-bomb. So in this case, if I had already done the implosion test, this would be 24 times 2 or 48. If I had not yet done it, this would be worth 24 instead of 12. So this essentially doubles the amount of a plutonium bomb. So that's huge. So how do we get these new resources? Well, mixed into the normal buildings that you shuffle into the deck at the beginning, I believe there's about 5 of these, where these LD plants, where in this case you would put an engineer there to get 2 LDs, 3 of anybody to get 3, 1 to get 1. There's only 1, 2, or 3 at a time that you can get on all the buildings. There's only 5 of them. So you add these buildings to your own place. You go on them to get these. You can pick up the H-bombs and then build them as such to double the plutonium bombs. There's a new weapon in the expansion called rockets. It comes with this board, this rocket construction board, and the 5 factories that produce rockets are automatically placed there. How you get those, similar to the H-bomb, same way. When a bomb cards are being passed around for people to take, you take yours, you discard it at the bottom of the pile, and then you can take one of these. These go on your own little sort of buildings. And so what would happen is if you had taken this and this was in your building, you would put 1 engineer, you'd get 2 rockets. Everyone gets one of these next to their own player board with a rocket of their color. And let's say this was in my building and I placed 1 engineer to get 2 rockets, this would go up to 2. Same thing with all the other ones. So how these work are, these can be used to damage buildings just like the bombers. But one big thing is, even if the person you're trying to bomb has fighters to defend, it does not matter. The rockets can bomb anybody, whether or not they have defense fighters or not, which just makes this a lot more of a attack-like game. The other useful benefit of this, you can also use the rockets to load bombs. Usually you need your bombers to load bombs, but now you can load them by taking the rockets down a certain amount as well. Speaking of airstrikes, there's an extra piece that you can put on top of the board, because typically the main board starts with a 2-space airstrike space. Now you can either make it more, where 3 people could go, or you can make it less and have 1. And of course there's always a variant to play with no airstrikes if you don't like it. The last section of this expansion is called personalities. They have about 7 personalities of different people that were huge to the actual history of the Manhattan Project. How this works is when you retrieve your workers, you also take one of these personalities that are available. They're all available at the beginning of the game, but as things go on, people will take them and have them. They each give you a special ability until the next time you retrieve your workers. So in this case, your buildings are immune to espionage. This is probably the most powerful one, that you cannot be espionaged while you have this. But remember, you have to return it and swap it with anyone that's available the next time you retrieve your workers. This one, once per turn, perform espionage on a single opponent building and do not gain a spy level. So that just allows you to do an espionage, pretty much free. At the start of your turn, you may move the $2 building to the bottom of the deck, slide the others down, and put $1 on the bribe pile. That's kind of interesting. And then the last one I'll show you is, once each turn, collect 1 fighter and 1 bomber, and optionally perform 1 airstrike action. Do these in any order. So again, these just change the game. That gives you a different special ability that will change every time you retrieve your workers. All right, well, there's second stage. Well, first of all, the fringe items, the player aids, love them. Maybe they should have been in the base game, but hey, they weren't. But they're here, which is cool. I love player aids. I'll always use them. The extra boards, they're cool. They're not necessary, but it does pimp out your game a little bit. It makes it look kind of, trendy. So I use them every time. They're cool. The nations. So the nations itself, that mini expansion that was by itself, just the aspect of that nations, I love it. It's probably my favorite part of the expansions, the nations and the nations 2. Because you get this personality and you get this little thing that goes on in your buildings that you get to use that nobody else can espionage, nobody else can bomb, and it kind of gives you like this own little, kind of like maybe it might point you to a different strategy than you normally would take, and they're each very kind of thematic if you look at how they are and which countries they are. So the nations and the nations 2 expansions, awesome. They're both 7 cards. I would just get both of those. The nations is by itself. Nations 2 is with this expansion. Get both of them because nations is one of my favorite ways to play with this expansion. Gotta get that. Now, the other things, the H-bombs, I really liked it. It's another part of this expansion that I really did like. I love the fact that it did introduce a couple, 5 new buildings that had this resource, the LD, those orange resources, the lithium. And for that, you could pass back a bomb to get an H-bomb and try to build it and double one of your plutoniums. I mean, in a small player game, you can get a really powerful plutonium bomb, or get a small one, implosion test it, get a big plutonium bomb and get an H-bomb and just win. I mean, it just gives you a different strategy to go down if you're building plutonium bombs, or if you're not, and that might push you down that way. So I really liked it. Even though there's not a lot of those buildings that don't always come up, when they do, some interesting things happen, and you know that it takes a ton of workers and a lot of those LGs to do it. So you're watching easily, you're watching how many they're collecting, and you know they're gonna need like 5 or 7 or, a lot of them. So as they're starting to collect them, you can kind of see the writing on the wall, and it kind of is a time clock in your head to like, you better hurry up and start, building some bombs if you want to win this game. So I love the H-bomb side. Okay, let's talk about the rockets. If you did not like the airstrike in the game at all, you will hate the rockets and you'll never play with them. Me personally, I've never had a problem with the airstrike. I like it. I think it doesn't get used overboard because half the time, the building that you're going to be wanting to blow up is probably one that you're going to want to be espionaging and using yourself anyway. So typically airstriking isn't a big problem in our game, but it's used sparingly, like the way it should. And so I like the rockets because now, haha, you have defense, doesn't matter. I'm getting that building that, I'm getting that reactor that I can't use. I'm going to blow it up. And then the other cool thing is you can use it as, a bomb loading. So it's got a dual purpose. So I like the rockets. I always play with it. Now, we have the personalities. I did not like this part very much. The idea is cool, and some of the things that you can do, like espionaging without having to go, some of that stuff is cool. I like the idea. The problem I had with it was you really have to be playing with very experienced players to introduce this. And even when you do introduce it, it slows the game down. Because now, what's usually a fast turn, which is collecting all your workers, they're sitting there and APing about which one should they take. And so for me, it just slowed the game down too much. Good idea. I kind of liked it, but it just didn't work well for me. That's probably the only thing that I didn't like from this expansion. So all in all, I think this is a no-brainer. Every time I play the game, I play with Nations. I play with Nations 2. I play with the rockets. I play with the H-bombs. I almost never play with the personalities. So hey, that's a pretty good ratio, and I like all the fringe stuff we talked about. So overall, I'm always playing with this unless I'm playing with new first-time people. I probably will never play with the personalities again, but hey, 4 out of 5, that's 80%. That's a great expansion. I think if you like Manhattan Project, this is a no-brainer. You gotta get this.
So much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at DicetowerNetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.